Thank you, Daniel, and thank you everybody else, and thank you for giving up your time this evening. That we've already heard, there's no denying that COVID has caused significant disruption to children's education. We're now into the third academic year of disruption, and this will have a lasting effect. The government has got bored with COVID and thinks that it's over. I don't know if you've seen the announcement made today that they are going to stop free testing kits for people. You know, again, another announcement made that has an impact on our school and college leaders in the holidays. Made an announcement made to the press, not through consultation with those people whose workload it will have impact on. You know, mental health, relationships and social interactions of our children have been greatly affected by COVID. It's not just their educational attainment. Young people have experienced isolation, loneliness and grief. Their families have suffered financial hardship and redundancy. They've experienced family breakup. They've moved house. They've witnessed an increase in domestic violence, and they've missed out on what is often the one consistent thing in their life: day-to-day access and relationships with their teacher, their TA, their dinner lady, their school community. If you think about year 13s, they're the double COVID year. They didn't sit their GCSEs and they had the worst online provision when they were year 11s. They were let go, many of them, and didn't have education from March until they started their sixth form education in September. That means that the last public exam the majority of those students took was their SATs in year 6. For year 11s, their last normal school year was year 8. For year 10 students, their last normal year was year 7, and children in year 2 started school remotely. Young people and adults have found the transition back to face-to-face learning a challenge as well. There are increased behaviour issues in schools. It's harder to make and keep friends, and just the noise of the busy school environment has made it much more difficult for many people to deal with. Our members are reporting increases of exam anxiety, not just the practical, exam anxiety of sitting the exam, but the practical experience of not knowing what you can bring into an exam hall, where to sit, can you go to the toilet, schools, where do I put my bag? And schools and colleges are also seeing more students applying for exam concessions, putting pressure on centres to find individual rooms, invigilators. And we know that this disadvantages students more in larger schools and colleges, and particularly those in lower socioeconomic groups and those with special educational need and disability. Now, we've heard that school absences aren't quite as bad as they were, but they still aren't where we need them to be. The latest figures show that despite a drop in COVID cases, absences are, still 1 in 25 pupils or staff were absent with COVID-related reasons as a national average at the beginning of the month. And other illnesses and absences and pure exhaustion of staff is also now beginning to kick in. If a young person's attendance in school is between 85 and 90%, that means they have missed between 5 and 6 weeks in a classroom. And my ex-colleagues are telling me that they're in a class of 30, the average attendance of their students is between 75 and 80%. That means students have missed, out of an A-level class, they've missed a half term of education. And that will have a significant period of absence for a child to overcome has a significant impact on the workload of our profession. For teachers and support staff, the practicalities of trying to catch up pupils when they've had, a rolling period of 10 days off. You might have 5 children in your class off for a period of 10 days. They've not all missed the same thing. You need to move on to a new topic. How do you do that? Teachers are talking about having to put resources onto online platforms, simultaneously teaching live and streaming lessons, replying to emails from concerned parents, dealing with crying parents during remote parents' evenings. There's additional disruption to timetables for mock assessments, which generates marking. There's a constant churn of planning and changing your planning. There is a real danger that staff are going to be asked to do SATs and revision booster sessions for GCSEs and other exam groups during their holidays. And the impact of the lack of support from government directly on the workload of college teachers has just exploded. You know, we talk about the changes to guidance. They were often on Friday evenings in the holidays, breaking at 2 o'clock in the morning. This has exasperated the workload pressures that we already knew our staff were under. They need to be Ofsted ready, waiting for the call. And pre-pandemic, teachers and school leaders were working more unpaid overtime than any other profession. And the knock-on effects of workload has seen numbers of teachers leaving the profession in their hundreds. Thousands. For members ringing our advice line, they're regularly asking about notice periods and wanting to leave at Easter. We are heading for a real crisis in school and college leadership as people take early retirement or look to change profession. And we also know that initial teacher training applications this year are down, and that's after 8 years of the government missing its own target for recruitment for initial education. There are further problems due to high numbers of short absences, lack of supply staff. You cannot find a supply teacher in Cambridgeshire for love or money at the moment. And rightly, schools are prioritising some classes over others with support with supply teachers. They're prioritising their exam groups. But this means that other year groups are less likely to have a subject specialist or indeed a qualified teacher in front of them, which points to the longer lasting educational impact. Now, of course, this is different in different areas and different for different subjects. But I would say to you as councillors, as governors, as parents and educators, ask a year 10 maths GCSE student, a foundation level student, a student on that borderline between 3-4. Ask them how many maths teachers they have had in their secondary school career, and I guarantee you it will be in double figures. Now, that is no way to help a young person prepare for normal exams with grade boundaries that are going to be back to almost pre-pandemic levels. So what are we asking you to do? So it is vitally important that we organise as councillors, as governors, as educators, and as NEU members about what we can do to have a strong educational recovery from the pandemic. The recovery has got to address some of the longer term structural issues that we see in education, including accountability, workload and pay, as well as the shorter term issues that are being discussed more widely here this evening. The practical steps that you can take, Louise has already talked about. We have a model motion for councillors to submit, and I know as a councillor that is often quite tricky to do. You might have limits on the number of motions that you can take. It would be great if those motions could be cross-party. It would be greatly appreciated if you could debate and pass those motions before the school teachers review body published their report to the Department of Education sometime in May. And for governors, we really do need you to open up their conversations in your schools and colleges. Your head teachers and your school leaders need space to think. They need space to talk, and they need your support. They haven't had a break in 2 years, and constantly they are firefighting against a government that doesn't really seem to care about young people or to think beyond the end of next week, never mind the end of the academic year. So thank you very much. Please look at the documents that we've produced, take them to your schools and ensure that you're doing everything to support them to do everything possible to support our children and young people. Thank you.